Well, welcome. I'm Victoria. It's so nice to have you here with me today. I have read a whole bunch of books, and because my last video was to talk about what I'm going to read in September, this is really the final books that I read at the end of August. I have so many books that I wanted to read that have bookshop, library, all these different things that have that in the title that I just always add these to my to-read list. So I just want to start with The Lost Bookshop. This book I had seen multiple places over the past couple of years. The cover really enticed me. So I kind of went in this blindly. I didn't know what it was about. I just keep seeing it around. Each one of these are different. So there are 3 books that I read, and I wanted to read them before the start of September. So in The Lost Bookshop, this was an interesting one because it takes the perspective of 3 people. 2 of them are in modern time, but one of them is in the past. And in the past, they're in like the 20s through the 40s. And that character, they don't even really explain well the time as it goes on. It's just like suddenly you're in the 40s at one point and you're like, wait, weren't we just in the 20s? And I was just so confused. Like, I feel like the author didn't exactly explain to us how the time was. It just didn't go very well. I had a little bit of a difficult time with this book, but at the same time, it wasn't a bad story. This book does not have completely clean content. It's not very sexual, but there were things in here where they talk about situations. There is definitely sexual things going on. I don't like books that have things like that. I wasn't expecting it. I actually thought this was going to be a clean book completely. There's also talk about suicide in this. You know that they did it based off of what they described. All right, so what is this book about? This is about, in the modern time, we have this woman. She has escaped her abusive husband. She is trying to find work. She wants to go to school. She wants to set her life because she has been controlled. She has not been allowed to do anything on her own, and she wants that opportunity. Her name is Martha, and she really doesn't know anything about books, but she tries to learn more about them because she goes to a library and she wants to read up on things. She wants books for school. While she's there, she meets this one man. His name is Henry. He knows a lot about books. Now, he's been on this quest to find this lost bookshop, or at least this manuscript that he has heard about. He is very inspired by this story, and he starts telling this girl that he is fascinated by, who is Martha. He starts telling her about it, and she's like, intrigued. She finds out about this other person, and this is Opaline. Opaline is our person from the past, from the 20s. Now, Opaline, she is trying to escape being forced into a marriage by her brother. She wants to choose love. She's always wanted to. So she's very upset with him that he's chasing her all around and trying to force her to marry someone that she's not interested in. She goes to France, and while she's there, she meets someone who, like her, she's very, very smart. She loves to look into books. She loves first editions, and she's one that likes rare books, and she meets this other man that is also interested in such things. This book has a lot of difficult things. It's really about the mistreatment of women. There is also talk of murder in this book. I don't think that these things were well explained. I feel like the plot sometimes got lost. I think that there were some really deep situations that were so sad. Then there are also things that you're like, so I don't understand what happened. How did this happen? There are some romantic tales in this. What I don't like about this is there are a lot of times these people have these thoughts. They are so into someone, but then it never comes out of them verbally. They don't show it, and they just like say things that are not in their thoughts. And I don't know if that's something that a lot of people do, where they hold back how they really feel and then they say things that are not right. And it bothered me a lot because there was so much of it in this book that it's like everyone was holding back from speaking their truths. The whole story about the manuscript was great, but then there's this weird stuff that happens in this, like magic of some sort, and it was not explained well. I'm very confused by it. It falls through the pages where you don't understand it at all. They don't talk enough about it. It's very, very vague. That's why I struggled with this book, because there's just too many different things and it doesn't flow well. It doesn't mush. It's missing the mushiness. But because of the content too, that lost me as well. I really enjoyed parts of the story, and then other parts I was just like, what's going on? So that's this book. I'll get back to more of those library bookshop type of books. I want to talk about Homesick. Now, I had mentioned how I had this book and that I was going to read it eventually. So I finally read it. It was the last book that I had in possession before I donate my books to different places when I buy them. So this was the last from my pile. This is about a woman who lives in a shed. This is a real story. I am fascinated by stories of people that are minimalists, stories of people that live in tiny houses and boats in shacks. My husband owns Walden for his little stack of books that he has kept, and I have read Walden. She is fascinated by Henry David Thoreau's Walden. So she feels like she has so much in common with him. I disagree. There are parts that I could see where maybe she feels that way because they both lived in a little tiny shack. They both live by water. They both are doing their best to defy what maybe the government wants for them and doing things on their own terms and to relax and without having jobs to hold them back, and both being writers. So I see how there's situations like that. So every chapter starts with a quote from Walden. Read Walden. It's a great book. This book is not that great. What I liked about this book is there was a book I read earlier in the year called Cabin, and I felt that book had talked way too much about the building of the cabin and not so much about his feelings. This has a lot more of her feelings and what she's going through while she's living in the shack, and I appreciated that. She talks about surfing. I liked that. Her descriptions of nature were beautiful. She does use some bad language in this. It's the only thing really that is not clean, except for the fact that she does make excuses for why she gets high on mushrooms once in a while. This book was not bad. I got so sucked into it the first 100 pages, and then I got a little bit bored, and then it got a little interesting. And she talks sometimes about her family, her upbringing, but she does talk about some of the neighbors she has, talks about theft that goes on in her little shack, which she brings up at the beginning part, and then again at the end, and kind of fills in the gaps in between the stories. And the person that owned this before me has lots of like footnotes and highlights, and I actually enjoyed reading what they wrote on the sides of their book, because I got this secondhand, and it made me think more about what I was reading. So that actually was pretty cool, because I'm not someone that writes notes. This had been recommended to me through me searching for things on cozy homes, books about cozy homes and simple living on Pinterest. She's from England, by the way. She's actually Welsh, but had been living in England during this. All right, The Lost Library. The Lost Library lost me many times. This is a middle grade. It was cute. I almost gave up on this book a bunch of times, and a part of me wishes I did. This book starts out talking from the perspective of either a mouse or a cat. They're both in this book. I don't remember who was who in the beginning of the book, but they're talking about a little library that exists and how they kind of run it. But then I'm like, oh, okay, it's a cute book about mice and cats. And I was like, all right, I haven't read a book like that from that perspective in a long time. But then it starts talking about perspective of a little boy. And then it starts talking about a perspective of a supposed ghost. What is going on here? I don't understand what this book is about. The only thing that I gathered while reading this was that the little boy, he hears stories about a fire that took place, burned down a larger library, and his father had worked at that library when he was a teenager. And so now he's trying to investigate who really burned down the building, and he's trying to figure it out. But then you hear why maybe the ghost is important in their story, but they're hardly in it. Why is this cat and mouse even in this? It doesn't make sense for the rest of the story. So I felt like I was reading two different books. I am not understanding what they're trying to get across with these creatures and the people. It was just odd. It didn't work. Let's talk about The Pretender. I had read the first two books of these, and the first book I didn't really care for. The second book was pretty good. This book was actually pretty good as well. My issue with this series, it says right here, Mifflin County Mystery. There's no mystery throughout any of these books, okay? The whole idea is that in the first book, there is this guy, he's trying to find his sister who goes missing. He's trying to figure it out. He barely investigates. Then he's got a love story going on. Then his little sister also has a story. She's very, very jealous of the older sister that went missing. She wants her mother's attention. Second book is about the best friend of the missing girl. Have you heard from the missing girl? No, I haven't. And then she starts talking to the ex-boyfriend of the missing girl, and he had been accused by some people as maybe murdering her. And then you're like, okay, but the whole book is a love story. And then this book, I can't even say what it's about. Just talking about this book is a spoiler if you want to read the first book. So this is an Amish mystery. This is not an Amish mystery. These are Amish love stories. This one was actually really, really cute. So I'll just say that there's this girl who is an Amish girl. She gets into sort of trouble, gets this guy that she knows who is not Amish to help her out. They do that whole like let's pretend we're in a relationship thing. So that way it will help my situation. So that's what they do. They pretend together and their feelings start to grow for one another, but they don't talk about it because they're playing a role. So that's what this book is about. That is the plainest way I could talk about this book without giving anything away. It was good though. I liked this one. Not bad. As a whole, the 3 books, I mean, the one annoying sister who is so jealous out of her mind drove me nuts the entire 3 books. Least favorite character, she made my blood boil. They wrote her very well. The series wasn't that amazing. If you want to pass on it, I get it. Usually, Wanda Brunstetter, her books are usually pretty good. Let's talk about Phantom Pawn. This is a little novella. It's only like 60 pages, 70 pages, something like that. It's from the Shady Hollow mystery series. This one is set on Goosey Night or Mischief Night. I don't know if other people have those names, but in the town I grew up, we always called it Goosey Night, but the town I graduated in called it Mischief Night. So it was always very interesting to hear those things. I don't know why we call it Goosey Night, but that's what we grew up with. Phantom Pawn is about these critters. Vera Vixen, she is the main character in all of these books. She's a journalist. And there is a girl that she had interacted with earlier in the day who goes missing. And then she starts to find out this mysterious story, a lore that has been told for generations. She's trying to piece together this lore because people think maybe they can find this one area and maybe that creature is there and she has to beware if she's trying to find the missing girl. And she's this, I love that this character is like, whatever, this is not a real story. So I'm just going to keep investigating and I'm going to prove your story. As well as it might be fascinating to you guys to tell these ghost stories, I don't believe in that thing. So I really love her take on this. So she's like, I'm going to investigate. I don't have fear. I just love her. And it was really good. Like, even though it's short, man, the way they write these books, this is written by 2 women. They go by Juno Black, but they're 2 other named women. I love this series. So finally I'm caught up on this series. There are 2 novellas. I think it's the 6th or 7th book is coming out. This was really good. Between Earth and Sky. This is a book that I had found out. I don't even remember exactly how I found out, but looking up historical fiction, love stories, I thought this was going to be a clean romance. It was not clean. My goodness. If you like clean romances, do not read this. I was like, what? The things that were in here went too far. Like, I don't know how you would rate your spice, but this one is semi-spicy. But the story was so very well told. And so that's why it was so annoying, because I'm like, I don't want to read these parts, so let's try to skip this part, get to other parts. So Between Earth and Sky is about this one young woman. Her name is Alma. She was raised with a father who ran one of those schools where Native American children are taken away from their homes, stripped of their identity. So she went to school where her father was in charge of this and her mother was a teacher. And these children are treated pretty terribly. She witnesses that stuff. She makes friends with them. She learns the language of the main tribe that the kids that she has in her school, what tribe they're from. She goes back and forth between now and her childhood. You learn that now in her adulthood, she is married to a white man. And there is one of her childhood Native American friends is accused of murder. And she's like, he would never do that. He was the kindest person, though no way did he murder someone. And her husband's a lawyer. And he's like, can you please represent him? And he's like, who is this person? Like, she never talks about her past. So he was like in shock. He didn't even know she spoke another language. You start to learn more about her story of where she had been, who she had become. The book is so beautiful and so sad. It makes you cringe while you read it, of the treatment of Native Americans. But the spice stuff, they didn't need to put the sexual things they did. There's a limit. My limit is pretty low of how much I could take. And so I was just like, I really thought this was not going to be like this. There is violence in this book. Not in great detail, but there is violence. There's bullying of children. So yeah, that's what this book is about. The Book Lover's Library. This was a beautiful book. Out of the library and bookshop or whatever books that I read recently, this one was very lovely. However, it felt too much like other books that I've recently read. That whole premise of where you're sending a child off to live with another family during World War II in England to protect them from the bombings that were threatened from Germany. This one is another one of those stories, but it has its own plot. So this one is about a woman named Emma. She is a widow. She has been a widow for a while. She got married really young. In that time period, women that were widows could not get work, but she needed financial help. She gets a job. Her daughter's name is Olivia. Olivia doesn't remember her father, but Emma talks about him. Emma works at what is called a lending library. So back in that time, and even today in England, they have these lending libraries. It's where you have a subscription where you're able to take out library books, but you pay a fee. She was working at the lending library and she has to send her daughter off to protect her, but she struggles really deeply of doing that. She doesn't want that. And Olivia wants to be with her mother. The two of them are a team. And throughout this, they do talk about some of your favorite books like Anne of Green Gables, Little Women, The Secret Garden, Emma, War and Peace. There are just so many books mentioned in this because, you know, when you mention these books, it brings this warmth of those who are readers. Women most likely will read this book, so they go, oh, how nice that she's reading this book. Dangerous Territory. This young woman who wants to be a missionary. She just loves the idea of going on the mission field. It has been embedded in her. She read a lot of stories about missionaries, which I had done the same, like a lot of these missionaries that she talked about. I had read books by them as well, and they fascinated me. They drew me into wanting to be a missionary for quite a while too. So this girl, she wants to go to China to teach. And I've known people that have done that. So they go under this guise of teacher, and they're allowed to be asked questions about their religion and stuff like that. They're not allowed to bring up God or religion themselves. They have to be asked these questions. So she talks about her time going in, training, going into China, but then there is something that happens where this one young woman constantly asks her questions about God and becomes such a devoted Christian that she starts getting in trouble in China, and therefore this woman gets in trouble too. But throughout this, she also talks about how she had this boyfriend that she was on and off with. There was this other guy that she was drawn to as well. This is a real story. This is written by the girl from her experiences. She's a grown woman now with her family of her own. It was nice to read another missionary story. It had been a while since I had last done so. She's very open. She's honest about her feelings and her emotions because she's not trying to just go like, yes, I am such a wonderful missionary girl. I've no problems. I could share my faith with everyone and I love God so much. She talks about her struggles with her own faith, going through some of these hardships. I thought that it was beautiful that she expressed those things. The last book is Women Who Risk. This was one of the books that I had wanted to read for several years. It had been on my to-read list for too long, and I didn't know how to find it, and finally I just got it for my Nook. So I read this so quickly. I loved this book. This was really incredible. This is about women that are Muslim in Muslim countries and what it's like for them to be Christians there. Like a lot of them were not Christians, but this is their stories of how they came to Christ and how they are unashamed. They are not afraid to die for their faith, and that while sharing their faith, other people have found God too, where they all could get killed because it is part of their Quran. When they are taught that they become Christians, they're infidels and they should be killed. They're called all sorts of things. So one woman says that, you know, if they knew she was a Christian, like one of them, they'd throw rocks or spit at her just walking down the street and they could just kill her whenever. A lot of these were refugees where they escaped. And what I really loved about this, most of these women had come from abusive relationships. Their husbands are beating them all the time. They're not treated well at all. And just how God uses them through their kindness to their husbands, that some of them shift and turn. There was one story in here where the man became a Christian before the wife, but she was treated so terribly and saw the big change in her husband that it drew her in, and he just transformed. And a lot of these people, they had these dreams about Jesus coming to them. Even how in one refugee camp, these women coming from different countries all had like the same dream, and they met and they all talked about their dream, and they were like, we had the same dream. And it's just like neat how God can work that way, and he could use dreams to heal people. And there are certain stories that like there were major healing issues for people, like brain aneurysm, and Jesus coming to them in a dream in this. And I believe these stories because no, I don't think I've ever said anything like this on any vlog. I have talked about how I was partially deaf, and usually people will ask me, how'd you come out of that? And I say it was a miracle. And if they ask me the miracle, I'll tell them. If they don't ask me what the miracle was, I leave it. But the miracle was I had a dream where Jesus healed me of 80% of deafness. I couldn't speak because it was so bad. And Jesus came to me in a dream and healed me. And I saw him. So I've never doubted that he exists, because I wouldn't be able to speak to you today. I wouldn't be able to hear anything you had to say if it were not for Jesus. So to me, it's a miracle. Jesus is real. So when I read this story about these people with these dreams, these people like hate the idea of Christianity and they don't want that. And yet they were touched. They're like amazing, like what they do. So I loved this book because I understood what this would be like. I've had just a glimpse of that, but they actually are suffering. It was just so good. I just loved this. So that's it. I know I read a lot of books and I have so many books I've already started to read. Like I'm about to finish a bunch of books at once, like 3 books at once I'm reading. Almost done. So yes, I am having such a great time reading. And then the next one, I'll definitely start hopefully cutting through my TBR of those 42 books that I'm supposed to read that I made this goal for myself of. Thank you so much for being with me here today. I know this was a long one. If you stuck around and you heard everything, thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye.